Hi, good morning, and welcome to the ZP Developer Zone. So every Sunday at 8 a.m. London time, we like to do a roundup of the news from Zimmer Peacock for this week. And this is that roundup. So I'll basically jump into it and say, this vlog podcast is a kind of mixture between news and some technical updates. So one of the technical updates we did this week, we talked about it in our ZP Developer Zone as well, is we talked about something called the Sferringhouse electrode. And if you look at a blood gas analyzer, there'll be with a blood gas analyzer, these are often in central hospitals. They're sometimes termed kind of clinical analyzers. And people have their blood taken, and the blood is taken to a robot or carousel, and then all these patient samples of blood go through the machine, and it does a host of tests upon that blood. And one of the tests, or one of the results that might come out of it, is termed PCO2, and the P stands for partial pressure, and it's partial pressure of carbon dioxide. So in other words, they're sort of saying this is concentration of CO2 in the blood. Now, I think the electrode that they've historically used there is the Sferringhouse electrode. And so at ZP, we do get some questions about the Sferringhouse electrode. And so we've just kind of tied some notes together on what the Sferringhouse electrode is. We did a video about it. And we also tied it to our pH sensor, because our pH sensor is a good platform from which to build a Sferringhouse electrode. So that was just some technical news we put out there this week. So the relevance is, at Zimmer Peacock, we're an ISO 13485 business. As part of that, we are very involved in things like blood analysis. And one of the analytes that people are interested in is carbon dioxide in blood. And traditionally that was done by the Sferringhouse electrode. And I think at ZP we're starting to help people move or modernize, let's say, that's Sferringhouse electrode, and making it more solid state. Now, some other news from Zimmer Peacock at ZP. There's a transition for us from being a biosensor company, and I just want to say hi to Aftab, who's come online this morning. Nice to see you, Aftab. So at ZP, there's a translation or a transition as we sort of transition from being a biosensor company to a biosensor to API business. Now, part of our transition from biosensing to API, and by API I mean application program interface, this is when essentially all biosensor data from us will actually end up in the cloud, and from the cloud people will be able to bring it into applications and databases where they can make good use of that data. So on that transition, you do need a cloud technology, and at ZP we have Julie. Now, Julie is also very relevant. Now, as ZP helps other companies with their desire to become a biosensor developer and manufacturer, then Julie will also play an important role in it. And we put a video out there this week. And what's important about this video is, if you're going to do biosensor development at any kind of scale, you're going to need, obviously, screen printed electrodes possibly. You're going to need to functionalize those electrodes, and you're going to need to do parallel testing. And when you've done parallel testing, you then need to do batch analysis of that data. So for Zimmer Peacock, when we're asked, we want to set up a new biosensing development lab, actually there's a few, points to it. You need the hardware, which is probably, screen printed electrodes, parallel potentiostats, parallel test jigs, how to make good connection to those screen printed electrodes. You need to be able to functionalize those electrodes, and then you need to test those electrodes. And when you've tested them, you need to know where your data is, and you need to be able to do what we would call batch analysis, processing lots of data at the same time. Otherwise, you're sort of you've basically got different bottlenecks, and data analysis is actually one of the big bottlenecks. That there's plenty of people who will want to let's say gather data, but then the analysis becomes the real sort of bottleneck and all of this. And so at ZP, we did put a video out there this week that says, Julia is a great database for uploading, storing, sharing, but actually also doing batch analysis on data as well. So what I will do now is jump to... so it's also some news from Zimmer and Peacock for this week. We're going to something called the ATTD, the Advanced Technology and Treatment for Diabetes. And I think this is quite relevant that, we have a lot of inquiries about diabetes and CGM, continuous glucose monitoring. And so we will be going to, it's probably Europe's biggest conference on, unfortunately, diabetes, the treatment of diabetes and technologies for diabetes. And so we'll be there in Barcelona this week. Myself and a couple of engineers will be there, both exhibiting but also attending the talks as well. And that's just so that we can stay up to date and stay relevant in the world of CGM technology. And I will talk about that next week's let's say webinar as well. So some other news from Zimmer Peacock for this week. We do get a lot of inquiries about people will come to us and say, I would like a gold electrode. Whenever somebody says I'd like a gold electrode, what they're sort of telling us is they want to make it a kind of an immunotype sensor. And more frequently now, people are saying, I want to make an immunosensor and I want to interrogate it by EIS, electrochemical impedance spectroscopy. And so at ZP, we're able to kind of show them that this can be done because we've at ZP have done it. We're able to show them a roadmap. So, for the journey with Zimmer and Peacock would be, we have the gold electrodes. We've done it in the past in terms of immunosensors and EIS. We have a roadmap, for taking people through proof of principle, something we call ZP Accelerator, getting on to sort of small scale manufacturing, going to clinical, doing larger scale manufacturing. And we also talk about the regulatory approval journey. This is something that people really kind of miss out on. I know that, Aftab is online this morning, really gets it, that the cost to get to some of this IVD market, especially in the US, which in the end is the biggest market, can have an approximate cost of something like 74 million. And just for everyone's interest, there will be some new material coming out in the next week where we'll actually talk about the cost to get microneedle technology to market as well. So we'll be doing some more of that kind of, what does it cost to get a wearable transdermal sensor to market? And we'll be using glucose as an example there. So you can watch out for that. But just to say, we did put a sort of a whole roadmap out for, if your inquiry or your question is, how do I get my gold immunosensor or my gold electrode immunosensor to market, then we do have almost like a roadmap for that. Now, at Zimmer and Peacock, I think this actually comes back to something we were talking about earlier on, which was people are very interested in obviously setting up their own labs, doing biosensor development. I talked earlier on about, you need the hardware, you need actually the training of the people, you need the testing, obviously, parallel testing, you need the storage of the data. Now, what we also have at ZP as well is also non-destructive quality assurance on those electrodes. So we just put some work up there this week about how when we've functionalized an electrode, we can come in, take an image and actually sort of quantify how well we have covered that electrode. And so I just want to make sure that not everyone, but I want to sort of emphasize that, I'm starting to think very seriously now about this journey about, I have an idea and I want to make functional electrodes. You need to be able to do this at scale, which means, doing a lot of things in parallel with a trained team. And even at the end of that, you need to functionally test it. But at ZP as well, we also have technologies for visually inspecting these electrodes and making sure that they're actually covered correctly. So when I'm asked the question, what do I need in order to set up a biosensor lab? It's a hard question. I think it's something that we're going to really have to sort of map out and even maybe do a webinar about as well. So non-destructive testing. We did do our developer zone as we always do every Thursday, 8 a.m. London time. This week we did talk about lactate generation 2 sensors. We talked about detecting glucose in sweat. We covered the Sferringhouse electrodes. We discussed fructose sensors, and we also discussed Julie as well. And Julie is obviously this cloud database. So it was a pretty, it was a 28-minute webinar, and we sort of, really squashed in a lot of information into that webinar this week. And I appreciate all the questioners. We got some nice feedback after I came along, so I appreciate the support that we get there. Now, this might be useful as well, that for me, something that really makes Zimmer and Peacock pretty good is actually, we know where our data is. We know, we have our Julie database, which we make open to other people as well, and so we've got something like 8 videos which just teach people how to do things like how to export data from Julie. So for example, if we're in a collaboration, we might upload data and a collaborator can download data. So it is actually a great way of sharing, data. We may, so we show how to share it, how to download, how to provide feedback. So Julie also has a field to allow you to give us feedback. Julie's also very, I wouldn't say agnostic, but we're trying to make it so that we can upload all sorts of data. So there's a system out there called Delta T. So people who are interested in the agricultural space, Zimmer and Peacock is a distributor for a company called Delta T. They're quite well known in sort of the soil monitoring community. So we have a little instrument from them that we're able to distribute. Because we own a couple of CH instruments, we're able to upload that data. You're able to upload PalmSense data. You're able to upload Autolab data. And then, as I've already mentioned, there's this batch analysis of data as well. That, at ZP and hopefully with our collaborators as well, they gather a lot of data, and you need to be able to upload it all and essentially analyze it very quickly. And that's what we mean by batch analysis. Now we do have a webinar this week. This is for a university in India, and this webinar is sponsored by Technando, who are our Indian distributor, and we will be giving that at 11:30 a.m. Indian time, and we'll be sort of focusing it around food sensing and agricultural sensing, and there's an online form to register for this webinar. So if you're following this blog or vlog, this podcast or vlog, just know that there is a webinar this week, and it will be at 11:30 a.m. Indian time, which is about 8 a.m. European time and about 7 a.m. UK time. But that will be live, and we'll be sort of more focused this time on food sensing and agricultural sensing. So some more, there's a little cartoon that we put up there this week as well, that because we're going to the ATTD, we did make a animation around diabetes. It's probably worth saying that if people want sort of a lighter, more, let's say, informative type videos and etc. or animations, to let us know. We're quite responsive to people's ideas, and so we did a video around sort of explaining diabetes, the statistics around diabetes, the kinds of sensors that we make at Zimmer and Peacock, and the kind of concept of CGM or continuous glucose monitoring as well. So I suppose it's worth saying there seems to be a lot of glucose in our conversation this week. And so that really sort of summarizes the news from Zimmer and Peacock this week. So I think some of the highlights coming are that we will be at this conference, ATTD in Spain. Some of the other highlights coming for this week will be that we're also doing a large webinar on Wednesday, and that's on sensors for food and agriculture. we will have our ZP Developers Zone webinar as well on Thursday. And I'm starting to think about that. The ZP Developers Zone webinar on Thursday might be describing the kind of workflows and technologies you need if you're going to do biosensor development. Because it's not an easy story. I think people if they're going to do biosensor development, they think it's, a single scientist with a potentiostat in a lab, and that's going to take a long time and probably not be successful. If that's the strategy, it's probably worth leaving it to our academic colleagues. But if you're able to invest in it and do it at scale, then I think Zimmer Picot will talk about that in the webinar this Thursday as well. So I'll basically summarize and say thank you very much. I appreciate the feedback we just got from Aftab regarding the animation we did, and just to say to Aftab, if there's any animations he thinks are useful to him, then to let us know. So I want to say thank you very much. It's been 60 minutes, so this is the news from Zimmer Picot for this week. If you've got questions, comments, anything, feedback to us, because if it's technical, we'll cover it in our webinars on Thursday. If it's questions to ZP, I'm sure they'll come in and we'll respond in a positive manner. So I want to say thank you very much. Take care, and I will see some of you on Thursday, some of you on Wednesday, and don't forget we do this podcast and vlog every Sunday at 8 a.m. London time, and I wish you all a happy week and speak to you soon. Okay, thanks very much.